Hi, everybody. Welcome back to a new episode of Dare to Be Fearless. I have been in London for 8 months now, and I talk a lot about how business here has been quite different than the US. One of the reasons that I came here was to try and understand the UK market, but also build more of a client base for a lot of the consulting that I had already been doing in the US. And it's been quite fascinating. And last week, I was actually at an event with KPMG, which many of you may know. That's a very massive consulting company. And I was connected to somebody who works at KPMG during London Tech Week. I was totally unaware that KPMG has this whole program for entrepreneurs called Emerging Giants. So if you are tuning in and have a startup, you can actually submit to essentially be on, I think it's a program that they do or some large channel where they essentially take on certain startups to help and assist with. So I've sent it to a few friends of mine. But there was a panel, and on the panel, I think there was maybe 5 or 6 people. Now, I don't know if I had walked away or what, but I missed all of the introductions of who was on the panel. But somebody was talking, and everything he said, I just was like, this guy is so smart. Everyone else was smart, but like, Oliver just seemed to be like a little extra smart. So afterwards, I went up to him and was like, I don't know who you are or what you do, but everything you said is so fucking smart. So afterwards, I Googled him and looked him up on LinkedIn, and he's the co founder of a very well known marketing agency in the UK, but they also have worked with many just worldwide known brands, and it's called Flight Stories. So I'm super excited to have him here today. I would love for you to kind of start from the beginning because even when you were talking, now originally when I heard words like marketing and sales and startups, etc., everyone uses those words. Like they're such buzzwords. So when I actually looked you up and I was like, oh, like you actually you've done it. You really made it in the world of this company. And I think even 6 million it said in like a press release you guys I think have generated, or like the first year that it was in business, which is phenomenal. So how did this begin?
Okay, firstly, I'm super flattered. I was joined on a panel by some extremely smart people. I actually feel I was the dumbest person on the panel,
Really?
being honest. Oh, yes, that there was some high pedigree of very smart engineers. But there is a place for people that are curious, that
Yeah.
try and articulate smart people's ideas in a more concise way. My journey is a really interesting one. So I am a failed indie rocker. I started my career as a musician, so creative endeavours was my first pursuit. Went to university when I failed there, studied music and promotion was an introduction for me into marketing, PR. It was kind of a set of modules that showed me a new world, and I thought, oh, I really like this. And what I loved about marketing was, and sales more broadly, marketing for me was the intersection between understanding people, psychology, and business. And I found that fascinating. I went on to do 4 years at a large media owner in a media career. Then I joined a startup, and that was a bit of a rocket ship. It took me all around the world. The company went public. I lived in the US for 5 years. And then 3 years ago, I started a new company called Flight Story with my co founder. And Flight Story was a reflection of probably the last decade of things that we were really proud of, our reflections, and also where we see opportunity. And one of the interesting things, if I look over the last sort of 6, 7 years of my career, I've been a benefactor of the world changing. And change presents a lot of opportunity. And when anything changes, people get that natural cognitive dissonance. You don't like it. It doesn't feel good. You resist it. You ignore it. That's what the natural reaction is to do when things change. I've had a belief that if you lean into change, you have an advantage over many other people. And that was the starting premise of Flight Story. And over the last 3 years, we've grown the business. We employ about 120 people now. We launched in the US about a year and a half ago. So we're delusionally ambitious, and there are 3 parts to the broader business, which is we do marketing services, we do media, and we have an investment fund as well.
How did you meet Steven? Because for those who don't know, he hosts a very successful podcast called Diary of a CEO, which in the UK is the number one, I think, business podcast.
Yeah, it's the number 1 podcast in Europe.
Oh, okay, amazing.
Yeah.
How did you guys meet?
We met off the back of me sharing a LinkedIn message of all places I think about 9 years ago. I sent him a message after seeing his TED talk and said, I'm very inspired by what you're doing, keep it up. That was it. I didn't actually have any intent, it was fully serendipitous. And he turned to me and said, hey, we're looking for people. I see you work in marketing. Would you like to join us? Or would you like to meet? And met him, met his business partner, met the kind of founding team. And I was just inspired. It was a very different type of business. I'd worked in a large corporation for 4 years. Um, very blessed to be well trained, mentored, learnt a lot, had fun. But this place was different. And that was kind of enough of a push for me to then join a startup and begin that journey.
I always say if people can cold outreach or email someone 5 times minimum a week, the opportunities are just endless. But okay, so growing up, you were into music.
Mm-hmm.
And so were you kind of the weird kid, the nerdy kid, the popular kid?
I hope I wasn't the weird kid.
Okay.
We
I feel
all,
like being weird is so good though. So I don't mean
yeah.
that in a bad way.
No, 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 no. But it's the self-image,
No.
right? I was actually a sporty kid, so yeah, I had a good upbringing. A lot of friends.
Siblings?
Blessed. I have an older brother,
Okay.
which is always competitive. When you have an older brother, you're always competing. He was better than me at everything. So from a young age, you're always competing. I was very invested in soccer, as you guys would say. I did boxing, so I was very competitive at a young age. And actually, my mother's a choreographer, and she was a little more creative, so she would take me to drum lessons. So that was my pursuit into music when I failed at trying to be a football player.
So post failing at that, were there moments where you were like, okay, I still want to do something different? Like I don't want to go for the rest of my life and work a 9 to 5?
Um, you know what? If I had no idea I would end up where I am today. It's really been a series of good fortune, a lot of hard work, um, and a lot of focus on the thing I'm doing currently. So when I was pursuing football, I was very focused. That's all I wanted to do. When that finished and I pursued music, that's all I did. I was obsessed. And then you have that kind of period where there's a certain age where you're really having to think, and every decision you make feels very consequential. You think, am I going to take this career path? Am I going to spend 3 years learning this thing to then go do a career doing this, this, or this? And it always feels very consequential. And what I've come to learn is um, through that process, I didn't have any idea what the next step entailed. What I did do is I pursued a version of mastery. I tried to just get very good at my craft, whatever that craft was. And through that process, I think you learn to love, you find passion for the things that you do. And then passion's obviously the fuel to, propel you to do objectively good things.
It seems like there was an age then when you started thinking more about, was there a certain age where you started thinking more strategically about certain things that you wanted to do in your life versus just throwing yourself into them?
Yeah, so I think two things can be true. There's kind of that internal dialogue that wants to go try a million things and has big aspirations and big dreams. And then you have, the reality of what you're confronted with. And actually, one of the things that I probably reflect, and I've leaned into that almost delusional voice. Despite your
Yeah.
circumstances, despite what you're doing at the time, there was never a part of me that didn't believe, oh, it's going to be very successful. And particularly when you start a business or you pursue anything where the chances of you succeeding are very low, you have to be an optimist. It's actually a Chomsky quote, which is, um, it's optimism is, what's the quote? The basic premise is optimism and pessimism. They're kind of both self-fulfilling. So you may as well try and be optimistic. It's a better, pursuit in life. So I've always held that.
If you're not optimistic, it's kind of like, what do you have, right? Because in a sense, you kind of lose hope about potential success or the future.
Yeah, and like success changes. If I looked at my life today versus what I thought it was going to be a few years ago, I go, wow, this is amazing. And then my version of success changes every single time. So I realized that some of my foundational principles have always been trying to master or consistently learn, improve, learn about whatever it is I'm doing. And through different stages, what started as more kind of all the things you learn from doing sports, whether that's team building, whether that's taking losses, whether that's competitive drive, all of those things, resilience, those kind of character qualities you learn from sports. I then went through a musical career, which is obviously a lot more of a creative pursuit. Consider that. And I think through that process, you steal a piece of all those experiences. And then when I went into a corporate environment, I was able to learn the structure and the governance, and I was very well trained. And then going into a startup, even that it was probably, by the time I joined a startup, I was about 27, which isn't young, but it isn't old either.
Oh God, I'm turning 27 in October, and I can't figure out if I feel young or old.
Yeah, it's
Guess
that.
it's neither.
It's that phase where, again, you have this impending sense of pressure that you put on
Doom. It's like
yourself.
I don't know. It's like an
You're
undeniable.
like,
I
am
don't
I
know.
where I
I
want to
know.
be? I feel like I've experienced a lot. I'm probably a little clearer on who I am, what I like,
Yeah.
what I don't. You're going through all those phases. What I will say is that was probably the moment for me where I really started to hone in and start to focus. I've been very broad, and each of these phases I've gone through have been probably 4 or 5 year chapters.
What are you? 32?
No, 35 this year.
35. Okay.
Yeah.
When's your birthday?
Soon.
Okay.
Soon, August.
August. Which day? My sister's birthday's in August.
15th.
It's a good month. I think hers is like the 14th or the 16th.
Okay.
Probably should figure that out. I tweeted the other day something about hard luck versus hard work.
Yeah.
Not hard luck versus hard work. And I was curious to see the responses because I always go back and forth with this. I mean, I see a lot of people amass, especially in this world of social media, all of these followers, right? They become incredibly famous. And it seems like a lot of it has to do with luck. Some of the people who I've seen where this viralness happens, and then I see other people that have this crazy hard work ethic and they never see that success, right? So what do you think about hard work versus luck? How much of that has played a part either in your success?
I think undeniably luck plays a role in your life, and you can start anywhere. I think if you're born in a Western country with an education system, with a rule of law, with opportunities, you are very blessed. On the world stage, you are very blessed. That is luck. If you're able-bodied, you're very blessed. So luck definitely plays a role. Working hard undoubtedly plays a role in your life. But what I've come to learn is what you work hard at is usually more consequential in deciding what outcomes you have. You can be the hardest working barista in the world. You can do, 16, 18-hour days being a barista, but your economic outcomes are going to be limited. But you can be a mediocre banker, a very mediocre banker, and you can have excellent economic outcomes. If that's your measure of success, which is usually a big part of most people's life. Where luck comes in, I suppose my turn of phrase when I think about luck is, if you typically do the right things, luck works with you as opposed to against you. Mm-hmm. So luck undoubtedly plays a role in your outcomes. However, hard work is a multiplier, but the most important thing is what you work hard at.
Oh, I love that. That's a very good quote. Everything you say, I'm like, maybe this will be the title of this episode because you're saying some very good things. So walk me back. So at what point had you, in a sense, I guess, failed at football? Was there a certain experience? I'm like not really into sports. I mean, I like to be at sporting events, but I don't really understand them. So how do you know that you can't pursue this?
Yeah, so I was 15 and probably 90%, if you're a boy growing up, you want to play football.
Yeah.
It's kind of ingrained in culture. From a young age, I played at a relatively high level. And when I got to 15, you're confronted with choices in the UK. It was whether you're going to go to college. I had an opportunity to have some trials and get paid to play football. And I had a hernia injury, which is basically, without being too graphic, it's your gut popping out
Yeah.
of the popping out of where it should be.
Yeah.
And there was a moment I was going to miss the trials and I was going to miss the sort of first half of the season. So I decided to go to college and I studied music technology. And that's where I met the people that I ended up forming a band. And I think football for me at the time became somewhat transactional. And there's that period in your life where you're, suddenly wanting now to have romantic relationships. You want to go see your friends. And the life of an athlete is one of solitude and discipline. The life of a musician sounded a lot more fun. So
And how was that?
it sounded a hell of a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
more fun. And that was a bit of a pull for me. So I kind of just gave up on football. There wasn't a moment that just said, you know what, I failed completely. But I would have never, I don't think I'd ever made it to the top level, but I could have made a career out of it. And then I pursued music and fell in love with that. And again, that delusional ambition or that self belief, whatever you want to call it, there wasn't a shadow of a doubt that I wasn't going to be a drummer in a band. And the band itself went on and got a record deal, and we had some moderate success. But through that process, I was very comfortable because I know that for something great to start, something has to end. So I've enjoyed that first chapter. I enjoyed the second chapter. Going back to study, I love learning. So going back to university, there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are anti-university, and I get it. It's expensive. Is there much faster, more economically uh, rewarding pursuits during the many years that you would spend there? Absolutely. But I think you learn a lot about yourself. You usually meet great people. It's a place of discovery. Should you get yourself in a lot of debt for it? Who knows? But it was a rewarding experience for me, and it introduced me to what ended up being, the career that I've had for the last decade. So I'm very grateful. Although I studied by large music, was kind of completely unrelated. I'm very grateful for those experiences.
Do you look back on giving up on football and have any regrets? If you had just
Oh,
given
when
it a
the
little
World
bit.
Cup's on,
Yeah.
absolutely. You see England get to the
Yeah.
final, and I'm like,
That could have been me.
maybe. But there's this
Yeah.
delusional part of them that thinks maybe at 35, if I just picked it back up,
You could. Why
I
not?
might get the call up.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Nothing. It's never too late, right?
probably for football. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's part of me that still maybe believes that internally.
So with the music and then the
Yes.
football, I mean, your parents, like how much or did they not care about your success at a certain age, right? Because a lot of people
Mhm.
don't want to pursue entrepreneurship because they're scared of what their family will think, or they're scared of what like their significant other will think if it doesn't work out. But it seems like you've always kind of strayed against the traditional molds.
Very blessed. My parents have only just do what you enjoy doing, what you pursue. Anything, you know, mastery. Pursue just being really good at your thing. Try
Are-
lots of things,
yeah.
learn what you like, figure out what you're good at. That's always been their advice. So I was lucky.
If someone's listening to this and has the opposite, like their parents, they really want to pursue something entrepreneurial, maybe 18, 19, 20, and their parents are super hard on them for not doing that, what would you suggest?
I think you should listen to your parents to a degree, but you kind of know yourself. You should look at your parents' life and say, is that the life I want to live? If the answer to that is yes, then maybe you should listen. If the answer to that is no, probably ignore them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, when you say it like that. Even if they're funding your college. I mean, all these college kids, I didn't go, but I didn't have the money to go. Like, I would have gone.
Yeah.
I actually love what you say about that because I think this day and age, and when you look at even on when I go on like Twitter or X, and I follow a lot of guys in tech and their thoughts on startup and just that grind and the hustle culture, and college almost seems so unnecessary nowadays, but
Mm.
it's also such a place where people go and find who they are and you make
Mm.
friends and connections.
Yeah, you don't need college to learn. You can go on YouTube and you've got humanities knowledge at your fingertips. You don't need today an institution to provide you learning opportunities. In a lot of careers, you don't need a piece of paper anymore to get opportunity. The world isn't gate kept in the way that it once was. But through meeting lots of like minded people that are on a similar journey of discovering who they are, who they want to be, you'll have some of your best experiences. And I'm a big believer in just being in new rooms. That doesn't have to be college, just being in different environments. We spend so much of our times today behind screens.
Hmm.
Go in a room, meet people, say hello to people. You never know. Some of my best opportunities have always come just seemingly randomly, and it's always started with me saying yes to something I probably shouldn't. Even in the last 3 years, I have many people ask just random in my, hey, I'd love to grab a coffee. I get it, and people are looking for opportunities or want to ask questions or things of that nature. I'm a bit of a people pleaser, and I say yes to way too many things. Because every time you say yes to those 15 minutes, you're giving up an hour to something else that's really important to you. So I've said yes to way too many things, but there's this strange irony that I've said yes to a few things and it's really then sent my life in a new path or a new trajectory, or it's opened up my eyes, or there's a connection being made that has ended up playing a role in later on in life. So I'm a big believer in your early 20s. Say yes to as many things as possible. Then you start to say no to more things and be a bit more intentional. But early, just yes, everything.
So those early days of
Hmm.
the young you or post university, do you remember any times where you either really just didn't do well at something and it kind of made you rethink what you were doing at the time, or being rejected in any area of your life where it also kind of got you down and made you not want to kind of keep going with the potential success you could have as a founder?
Um, oh, many losses.
Give me
Just
like maybe a few of the best.
taking L's left, right, and centre. So I think when I was younger, my dad is Bulgarian, and he had a much harder life than I did. Very hard life growing up, and he used to say to me, which is an unusual thing to say to a 3-year-old. He would say, "You're mentally tough."
Okay.
He'd tell me I'm mentally tough. And I never knew what that actually meant, but I grew up believing it, whether it was true neurologically, whether, but I believed it to be true because I was told it from a very young age that I was mentally tough. So whenever I've faced hardships, I've never taken them particularly personally. It's never stopped me trying. And doing something new. So my perspective on loss, you know, rejection, all those things are necessary. If you're not getting rejected, you're not trying hard enough. I think you have to take rejection. I'll give you some pointed examples. I got rejected from almost every job application for my first kind of trying to get a career and job. So many of them said no.
What were you
Uh,
applying for?
oh, really? It's like retail
Mm.
jobs, call centers. Nothing. I'm not talking difficult. These are not.
What's wrong with you?
These aren't difficult jobs objectively to
Don't they
get.
need people in the call centers too?
I felt like I was
You are
capable
dumb.
enough at the time.
Yeah.
However, apparently I wasn't. So just kept going, kept trying, and inadvertently, the opportunities I did land on ended up being probably a bit more suited to me and right. So yeah, I've fast track a few years in your career. You take many losses in business. There are months that are really difficult. There are meteoric highs. There are very deep lows. So having a constitution that deals with loss and reframes losses as lessons or rejection, if you reframe those kind of inherent negative feelings you get, um, it's a good constitution for success.
I think there's a lot of common themes that entrepreneurs have,
Hmm.
and definitely being able to bounce back, resilience, grit. And I like that you use those words, mentally tough, because I mean, whether or not somebody's parents are telling them that as a kid, I mean, that is literally the definition, right, of resilience and grit. You've worked with also entrepreneurs and larger brands and CEOs. So is there any common theme that you also find? I mean, is it that these highly intellectual, very successful people have in the way that they're able to either build a business, scale a business, or maintain a business that they run?
So there are many positive traits. Usually, to your point, very resilient. Usually very ambitious, very driven. The question then becomes, why is someone driven? most people are driven from a place of either insecurity, so some of these kind of demons you carry from your younger years, proving people wrong, that chip on the shoulder, all those cliches. I notice a lot of very successful people have that. Surprisingly, some of the most successful people I know are some of the nicest as well. They're
Why would you
genuinely
think they'd be the opposite?
well. I think and I've lived in the US, and there's my definition or my view on US business to maybe the UK. US business is a lot more transactional. I think in the UK it's a bit more relationship driven,
I agree.
and you may have sensed this
Yeah.
having come here and met a lot of founders, etc. Um, what was the question?
Question was common themes along the way with founders, resilience, grit. And then I said, why did you think some business owners, you said,
Oh, very nice.
yeah.
Yeah. Why do I think they're very? Well, I think that there's a common misconception that, to achieve great things, it comes at a cost. It's a zero-sum game, Someone has to lose for you to win. And it's definitely not the case. Usually, most of the people that I know that are tremendously successful have brought so many people with them.
Well, I think because the word ruthless also, when people think of very high powered business owners,
Yeah.
and you read one sentence about somebody who started a $1 billion company, and there's just, it seems like they're ruthless and they step over people.
Yeah, and take a controversial figure like an Elon Musk. In many respects, there's a reality that taking on these meteoric challenges, sending things to space, building tunnels, reinventing systems, pioneering a new energy system, like all of these things, neurotechnology, these are very complex problems that have extremely low chances of success. There's a reality that you probably have to be a bulldozer and move the world around you. You have to bend the world around you to take on those challenges, which requires a level of ruthlessness and extreme clinical nature to be able to be successful. But that doesn't mean that you can't have good values and good character.
Yeah.
But it does come at a cost, I think, when you're trying to take on some of those pursuits.
Are you an Elon Musk fan? Do you like what he's done with?
I've just started reading I'm halfway through his book.
Okay.
The Isaac, is it Isaac Walton?
I don't know. I didn't know he had a book.
His basically his autobiography.
Okay.
Fascinating. I tend not to be binary on these things. I have a ton of admiration for what he's achieved, and there are many things I like. There are many things that I don't agree with, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just because I admire elements of a person doesn't mean that I can't hold my hands up and say I think they're wrong in these areas. So
I lived in Austin for about 4 years, and it was only when he moved there that I feel like I really kind of paid attention more to him, but also Twitter,
yeah.
X, whatever people want to call it. I'm going to call it Twitter. And I don't know why, but now I actually find it a really great place to engage with people and build a fan base in ways that you don't necessarily get through, say, LinkedIn or Instagram. It's also very tech heavy, so there's like a lot of SaaS founders and stuff on there.
You're a fan of X?
Yeah, love it.
Do you?
Literally obsessed with it, actually.
So I used to love Twitter.
I followed you on it.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
I used to I don't really yeah.
Yeah.
I used to love my X feed now is just the most salacious. It's just death, and it's just a cesspit of like violence and things.
Yeah.
So it's a real interesting place. So at what cost is showing the most extreme parts of humanity?
I agree. I agree, and I will say mine it's like a manic feed. I have no idea half the time what's going on, but the friends and stuff that I follow, and especially like the founders, I love what they post. I think when people do, I can't remember what is Alex Lieberman, who started the Morning Brew.
Yeah.
He actually has really great threads where you can basically, it's like a story, and so it's kind of my source of news. I don't know why, but then again, like I don't like reading Elon Musk tweets, but I can't get him off my news feed. I guess that's the pro of him being the founder of the company is you
Yeah.
can't, even if you block him, it still comes up first.
Is that right?
Yeah, he like still is always there and like not interested, not interested.
I suppose if you own the
I
company,
know that's a,
you have to have
I
some
know
privileges,
presence,
right?
and it's always him. But then like the other things I really get. Plus, I find that people are really engaging. I've gotten canceled now actually twice on Twitter for the most bizarre things that have happened. But then the people who reach out are always so smart and so kind.
You said you've been cancelled.
Yeah, I just got canceled like 48 hours ago. This tweet amassed like 2 million things. One time I had one amassed 10, and that was actually really bad.
Did you say something very
I
controversial?
said I was with a 72-year-old woman on
Yeah.
Sunday who I was, and she said to me, "You can either have a house and kids or you can fly first class." I meant it to be one run on, but I made a space and I said, "I want to fly first class."
Right.
And instead, you would never think. And all of a sudden, thousands of people are telling me to die. Like this dumb girl, she's going to be single for forever. Like
Really?
blew up on Instagram. People must have thought I meant I want to fly. I mean, I do want to fly first class.
Yeah.
Like I want to have, like anyone wants to
Hey,
have it all, right? But they isolated that one thing. And it's like now popped up on all these like male heavy, like, like she's never going to get a guy with this mindset, dumb
okay,
stuff.
bit incelly type mob.
Yes, I will
Okay.
say there's a mob mentality on Twitter.
That's everywhere though. The most extreme
Bizarre.
opinions. The world is so void of context. You know, one slip of a phrase,
It's insane.
and that's the problem with distilling kind of knowledge and ideas down to a few characters.
Yeah.
There is a challenge in that. The problem we have now is then, to your point, when there's sort of a negative storm that brews in an algorithm and you're distributed through just these hate mobs. That is not good when you consider how it impacts and influences political discourse, the things we learn. Your digital diets are effectively shaping how we all think. So the fact that they're so extreme, I don't think is a good thing.
No, I think it's a huge negative thing. And I think there's no boundary. That's the thing, is it's very easy to, as you say, take something out of context. And that person is in no comparison protected, right? In the way that this, in theory, fake mob on the internet. So you work with these brands and stuff, these massive brands, but you personally on social media, I mean, I love your LinkedIn, but what's your overall mindset on it, on a personal level and on a business level?
So I have a couple of thoughts. Number one, having distribution, having an audience is such an advantage in life. My number one bit of advice for younger people is gain some digital leverage. Digital leverage can be curator following, learn how to, whether that's faceless, cultivate an audience around a passion that you have. Learn an AI application or tool better than all the incumbents and all your colleagues and all the people you know. And that will be an accelerator for opportunities and career progression. Very early on, it will give you many advantages. So I believe in digital leverage. When I think about my own personal use, I use mainly my social to do two things: to promote the companies or things I'm have an invested interest in, or to share ideas. And I love sharing ideas online for two reasons. Not that I like people just attacking me and trolling me and disagreeing with me. That's
Do
never
people do
nice.
that a lot with you?
Not a lot, because the great thing about LinkedIn, you can edit your post after. You know, if you have a blind spot and you say something like that, I can edit that. Now you look silly, troll comment. You're the silly one.
It's like edited 20 seconds ago.
Yeah. Someone said something to me once and I was like, yeah, I completely missed that one. Edit, and then now I looked and
Yeah.
now you look silly.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you very much.
Yeah.
No, but the important thing is I really value the feedback, because when you get feedback, whether positive or negative, a few things happen. You either reaffirms your own beliefs, gives you more conviction in what you've said, or it evolves or changes what you think. It's not a bad thing. Either's a win, right? So I tend to use social a lot to just articulate and try and formulate my own ideas and use the feedback loops that you get to crystallize them. So that's been important for me. In terms of how I go about it, I have a few camps that I consider, here are my themes that I care about and I have strong opinions of. And then I have this whole other camp of things that I maybe want to say in the world, but I just can't be bothered to do the delicate dance that's required to not offend or to I don't care about them enough to give an opinion.
Hmm.
So there's this whole other camp of things I could speak on, but I just probably don't.
Like what? Like in business or just in life?
Business, ideas, politics. There are a number of things that I try and have a very simple mental model of do I care? Do I have a strong opinion on this matter? And then the third question I ask myself, is it worth it?
It's never worth it.
Yeah, sometimes it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
For me to give a really strong opinion on a political party that I don't actually care that much for, it's not worth it.
So would you say that everything you post online, you think about how this can impact Flight Story?
I think you have to.
Hmm.
When you build a company, you're not thinking just through the lens of yourself selfishly. You have to think about your partners,
Hmm.
your colleagues. I think that's one of the challenges with this phenomenon that is sweeping social media, extreme transparency. On one hand, I applaud it, the fact that people can be a lot more honest and vulnerable online and share their flaws. On the other hand, um, we don't often see the negative cost. Every time you put anything into the world, people are forming opinions of you. And we have to remember it's not the hate mob that put hateful comments or the people that give you overwhelming admiration. The vast majority of social is silent. But each person that sees the thing you say or the thing you create or the thing you post, they have an opinion on you. They're forming an opinion. And that is your brand, that is your digital reputation. And that's going to work for you or against you in things that you do, whether that's a job you're applying for, whether that's a business you're building, whether that's someone you're trying to hire. So I do believe when you put things out in the world, there should be a purpose. There should be some intention behind why you are doing that thing.
I mean, I've seen so many influencers. I personally don't follow too. Number one, I hate the word influencer. I really just don't. I think it's very stupid, to be honest, because everyone has influence, and like people who have two followers are like pitching people for.
You shouldn't conflate influence with a following. They're
Yes,
different things,
very
right?
different.
Yeah.
And I find, when I see, especially some of these young people, the things that they post, and then people will say to me, you post so much about your life. And I actually, the stuff that I post is always very career driven, and sure, it's very honest and open, but I really don't talk about the stuff that I see some of these other people talk about. I specifically think about like dating or sex or, going off on somebody like rejection wise. I mean, I never post about that stuff. And I think other people do because of the
So is
views.
that your framework? There's certain things that you go, you know what, I don't have strong enough opinions, or I don't.
Oh, I have
Yeah.
opinions, but it's
Okay.
it's too public. I don't,
Okay.
even if it were to amass me a certain amount of following, right? It doesn't interest me because of the, as you said, the downside of the
Mm.
judgment and or the negative connotation. So I'm curious your opinion is for people who are desperate for views, for likes,
Mm.
right? And they don't think past that mindset of like, let me post anything about sex, let me post anything about dating just to get views.
Mm.
They don't even think like this may be too much for the internet. Like, what do you say to them? Whereas, like, is there a line where some of this stuff is too much for the internet?
100%. There's a cost to everything you do. There is undoubtedly a cost to everything you say. So you've got to hope that it's worth the cost that you're going to pay. That doesn't mean I'm the biggest advocate for sharing your truth, but you actually have to care. If your motives are, I want likes, or I want attention, or I want to grow a following, if that's the true motive, you've already lost.
Yeah, I agree.
That is a digital affirmation is the wrong pursuit. It's never the right pursuit, not as an individual, not as a company. I cannot count the number of times when I used to run a social media agency that brands would come to us and say, I want to grow my following. Can you help us? I go, okay, what do you do? They go, we sell shoes. I go, okay, so you want to sell shoes. Maybe a following will help you, but you want to sell shoes.
Yeah.
Let's start there. Let's not start with, I want to grow a following. That should never, ever be pursued. That's often the outcome of doing the right things and being considered. That's not to say you shouldn't have an appreciation and understanding for how algorithms work. There's some baseline truths. The most extreme opinion wins. If you want to garner attention, you have to find your 20%, meaning you have to be willing to upset the 80% that will disagree or
Hmm.
sits on the fence. You have to be okay with that and at peace. And you'll only ever be okay if you're doing it for the right reasons. For example, if I gave a strong opinion on business, on team building, on, technology, it's because I actually care. It's not because I'm doing it for likes or attention. That doesn't mean I won't frame how I say something in a certain way to garner more
Yeah.
attention. I may have a more provocative headline. I may structure things in a way that are optimized for social, but my opinion and the story remains the same and it's authentic to me.
That is so smart. I wish everyone had that mentality. I think that is actually such a genius thing that you said because it's going into something to be clickbait, right? To gain views and not even having the mindset of anything past that. The brands that you've worked with or founders, would you also say that that's kind of a similar mindset to somebody who's like, I want to start a company to sell a company? I ask you because I've interviewed a lot of people
Mm.
who are like, any founder who wants to start, say, an e-com business to eventually sell it has already failed because they're not even thinking about the original idea of like why they started this, the actual meaning or the purpose behind this brand. They just want to sell a company.
Yeah, you can have success if you have a very clear goal. Building this thing to sell this thing to get a great return for my time. That's okay, by the way. But you will never build anything great. And if you want to really achieve your potential and feel fulfilled, you probably should build great things, great services, great product, and you should be a master of your craft and the things that you do. And that's where you'll get your fuel. But it doesn't mean the two things can't
Mm.
coexist.
Okay.
In terms of kind of founders, it's a really interesting study that was done. They looked at all founders that were raising capital, and they gave a crude category of founders that had a high social presence, meaning they had a decent or reasonable following, versus those that didn't. And on average, those with a large social following gained 22% more capital. They raised 22% more each time. So, undoubtedly, at a baseline level, if you are a founder, if you have entrepreneurial aspirations, cultivating a community, an audience, having people see your ideas, your thoughts, what you do, how you're building, undoubtedly a multiplier of success in every endeavor, whether that's when you're trying to hire people, whether you're trying to raise capital, whether that's you're trying to sell products and services. It will be a huge value add. But there are no shortcuts to do it the right way. There are no shortcuts. There are things you can do to get there faster, but they're not really shortcuts because, again, it's the wrong metrics. Like there are a couple of rules today on social. I'll give you some real basics. Um, we've moved from a social media that used to be predicated on things you followed. Now, the vast majority of social media is built on a discovery engine, meaning your feed is different to mine based on my passions and interests at the time. And every time I interact with anything, I'm sending a signal, positive or negative, whether I like something. It's the reason that everybody's feeds shift gears and you start to be served a certain type of content based on what you need. It's really helpful for attention because your feed is always relevant, but the people that you used to follow may no longer be relevant in your life. So shifting from a follower-based social graph to a discovery engine has been a necessary move. What that also means for individuals is that you can build a larger following if that is the pursuit or the goal. You can do it much quicker if you focus on a niche. So you do one thing and you do it exceptionally well. So if you are passionate about AI, you shouldn't talk about AI because that's broad. You should talk about AI tools for automations, and you just review AI tools for automations and you stay very narrow, and that's how you can gain traction and velocity and momentum much quicker if you're cultivating an audience. But you have a dilemma with that approach. We are all multifaceted. There's a playful side of you, there's a serious side of you, there's things that you care about that are serious, there are things that you care about that are silly. Because we're so multifaceted, if you want to share and express yourselves online, there's probably not one thing that you want to talk about. You want to talk about many things. So one of the things that I've tried to do is go, here are three things that I want to have strong opinions on: technology, marketing, and then I'm going to bucket business and social issues, development, all of those things. And that's typically the only things I speak on. So it's still very broad. I don't take my own advice because my goal isn't to grow a large following. My advice is to build my reputation in certain fields, and they're slightly different goals. But if your goal is following, the number one thing you should do is niche down.
How long did it take you? I mean, how far into your life did it take you to figure out those three topics?
Well, I've been a marketeer for a long time. So I would say I've had a professional interest for a decade in marketing. For the last 3, 4 years, I've had more of an invested interest in technology and business. Um, but it's only through the process of content creation. I've done that quite consistently now for about 2.5 years, primarily on LinkedIn. And having done that for 2.5 years, I've kind of, it's maybe took me 18 months to figure out they're the themes that I actually care about.
Okay, so what you said about founders and being able to raise more capital,
Yep.
would you say that there's a lot of value then in this personal brand and somebody online having a personal brand
Oh, without a doubt.
as a founder and also having the company? Because it's almost two products then, even though you're probably selling, still bringing everything back to the product.
100%. And what you will see, some of the most successful outlier companies, you get a shop window through the founders or the employees into what the company is building, who they are, their personality. It's much easier to connect with people than it is with a company. What I will say alongside that, as your equity in your company gets bigger, so does your personal profile, and vice versa. As your personal profile gets bigger, it adds equity to the company. So there are a lot of benefits. I will say a cautionary tale. There are a lot of people that maybe swing the pendulum too much in self-serving and the pursuit of their own personal fame over actually building a company that does good work. Like, the greatest personal brand in the world will not help you build a great company. You've got to go build a great company. You might get attention because you know how to cultivate an audience, but you still got to go build a great company.
I was going to ask you because somebody asked me the other day on a podcast, what did he say? Oh, how do people who are hiring, and when you're hiring, like if and someone who wants to work for you comes to you and they also have this massive social media presence, like they're this so-called influencer or creator, whatever. Do you appreciate that? Like, do people who are hiring applaud that? Or does that kind of turn you off on a potential candidate if this person is almost running this side mini business of like their personal brand?
The answer is it depends. The reason I say that, I remember we were looking for a new creative director in the US, and there was someone that I followed online and I liked their ideas. I understood how they thought. And I met them. I was a little underwhelmed and, never meet your heroes type scenario when I had an interview with them. But one of the things that my colleague said to me at the time is, that guy literally just tweets all day. He can't be getting any work done. And there is a truth in that it can go one way. In my view, it was a strategic move of, we as a business sell to social media buyers. This person has a huge social media following. It inherently can only add more value to the company. But would he have made the best creative director? Absolutely not. He wouldn't have.
Interesting.
He'd have been a poor creative director. Would it have been a good ROI for the company? I still think so. Showing up on the feeds of tens of thousands of social media managers would have been advantageous to us. So that's why I say it depends.
What makes you fearless?
Fearless? I don't think I'm fearless.
You've got to be fearless. You're on the show and it's called Dare to be Fearless. So if you don't have an answer for this, you're getting kicked off.
What makes me fearless? I'll give you two answers. One of them is I have a fair bit of balance in my life. So I believe we all have these pillars that make up, and in my world, there's my health, which is my first foundation. There's my relationships, relationships, friendships, family, etc. And then there's my passions and my professional endeavours. The great thing about me, I try and invest in all of those things as best as I can. It doesn't mean that there's not inequality, but when one thing goes wrong in work, at least I have this thing going right for me. When I'm not investing enough in this area of my life, at least this is going okay. And I think that has given me a very balanced constitution by making sure I invest in those facets. And it's allowed me probably to perform better in business endeavours as a consequence. Probably because, you know what, if business fails, I'm okay. I got other things that I'm quite happy about. So, and then the second thing I'll say just around fearless is, what do we really fear? No one gives a fuck about you as much as you care about you. They don't in the world. So, you know, we don't know what happens next. I don't know if you're religious or not, but all we do know is you get a roll of the dice. So who cares? Give it a go.
This is very true. This is very true. No one's paying as much attention to you as you're paying attention to you. I want to wrap up with some, talk about Flight Story, but I'm really just curious on a personal level. I mean, you're incredibly chill and relaxed. Like, what is your morning routine? Do you ever feel stressed?
Oh, my morning routine is the worst.
Really?
I have some awful habits. I'm like, wake up as late as I possibly
You're kidding.
can.
I don't get this from you.
And then I'm 15 minutes out the door, perpetually late.
Wow.
Like my morning routine is not good.
I read this so wrong. I
No.
see you like drinking green juice on a farm.
Don't take advice from me.
Okay.
If anyone asks me morning routine advice, go read about someone else or listen to. I'm not the guy. My morning routine's awful. I wish it was better, but it's not good.
No.
I have 3 jobs. I have the job of like my work.
Yeah.
Then I have to go learn a load of shit. And that usually means I have to do that at like 2 a.m. YouTube binges, learning about this new I don't know, new technology or something, of, an idea, a concept. I'm learning about psychology. I'm having to learn all the time, and that fuels 2 things: ideas for business, but also ideas for thoughts that I'm going to put out as content. So yeah, fundamentally, do not listen to me for morning routine advice.
Okay. Wow. I literally just imagine you calm as like a goat on a farm, because you don't.
Quite calm, but
you're so fucking calm. It's like, it's remarkable because you don't seem to be fazed by anything. Like, do you ever get stressed with this? I'm assuming this is an incredibly stressful.
Stress is so objective.
Okay.
It's so subjective to the person. Yeah. Objectively, my life is extremely stressful. But to me, I'm balanced with it. I'm okay.
It's great to know that you don't need one of these morning routines with like green juices and your perfect farm life to have not like you can do it all.
No, I will say a little bit of sunshine in the morning, a cup of coffee, not rushing too quickly is probably a good thing.
Cool.
But yeah, I don't practice what I preach.
Well, here we go. All right. Okay, so I guess we can wrap up then.
on that inspiring note.
No, I guess you're really real. I interviewed a founder of this big fitness company. I mean, hers was so sexy, like the celery juice, and she's like a size. It's like everyone wants to be Rachel Katzman, who I love. But like, holy shit, that morning routine felt like it's too good to be true, and she's too pretty. It just felt fake. It just felt fake. But okay, so with Flight Story, how long has this company been around? When did you guys start this?
3 years to the day.
And what are some of the biggest brands that you've worked with? Like, what have they come to you guys for?
We work with everyone from emerging startup through to Google. Fashion brands, the world's biggest fashion brands, beauty brands, very eclectic mix. What do they come to us for? I think there are 3 areas we're particularly strong. The world is complex and marketeers have lots of choices. We do a lot of strategy work, and strategy isn't about doing more, it's about being intentional and focusing and narrowing down the choices that marketeers have. So we do a lot of strategy work. The next piece is creative. Creative is multifaceted, whether that's through comms, whether that's creative solutions for distribution, whether that's campaigns, ideas. We have an immensely creative team. And the third piece is we are obsessed with shiny new toys and technology. So people come to us to try something new, to understand how AI will influence their creative production, to understand how they can integrate it into their teams, to get a view on the possibilities of the blockchain and how Luxury brands may want to validate and use the blockchain to do X, Y, and Z. Our teams are very much curious minds, playing with what comes next.
120 employees you have in 3 years.
Yeah.
Do you see a future of selling this company?
TBC.
What's TBC? I know TBD.
To be confirmed. So
Oh, wow, I've never heard of that. That's so
that's
cool.
maybe a British
That's awesome.
phrase.
TBC. Cool. Okay, keep going. I just know TBD.
What would TBD be?
To be determined.
Oh, same thing.
Yeah, it's same thing.
Same.
Yeah. Okay,
Same,
cool.
same.
Sweet. Okay, so you do like it's potential.
Yeah. We're in the business of making money. So.
Okay. I feel like you've already sold the company and now you're gonna have to TBC this for the future. But anyhow, okay, so what is your last piece of advice for somebody who wants to start a company? Give me like Oliver's number one piece of advice if they have an idea but they're too scared to start.
Okay. Be patient, because the idea that you have might not be the idea that, makes the outcomes that you want to have. I have a belief that you should put ideas on the shelf. So you have it, don't just act on it, just wait. And if it nags away at you for longer than 6 months, then go do it. So I think there's an element of patience. The next thing is, don't try and have all the answers. You never will. Our business has gone through meteoric shifts, pivots, ups, downs, twists, every 6 months. The plan that we thought we had was different 6 months later. You just need to start, get some forward motion, momentum, a loose direction, and that's usually enough. And then the last thing then is, if you're going to start something, what you build and the field you build in will be very consequential to your outcomes, but who you build with will be the biggest thing. So make sure the early people that you bring around you, whether that's either investors or co-founders or that founding team, your culture, how you think, what you produce, what you do will scale from there. So make sure the people around you are very complementary and add things to whatever it is you're trying to do. Doesn't have to. I'm a big believer in hiring for strength, not hiring for people who have lacks, for people who lack weaknesses. That's what most people do. People get hired when they don't have weaknesses. I think just focusing on people that have very specific skills and strengths that are complementary to whatever it is you're doing.
You have been a true pleasure to have on this podcast. Thank you. Where can everyone find out more about you or Flight Story?
So I jabber on the internet a lot on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best place to find me. Just Oliver Yonchev on LinkedIn. Flight Story is just flightstory.com. Figure out what services we offer.
Unless you sell the company and we're in a TBC state over here, we're gonna have to edit.
TBC. That's all I can say.
TBC. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much for all of this. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to this podcast. Head to the show notes to find out more about Oliver and Flight Story. And if you want to follow Dare to Be Fearless on social media, it's at Dare2 Be Fearless. And my social media is at Alexa_Curtis. And I'll see you guys next week for a new episode of the show.